Okay, so this is just a little bit of an overview with an exemplar from a student showing you sort of what the CPT is looking like or is supposed to look like and so on. Okay, so we'll start with the actual assignment sheet. Okay, the CPT, this is a little bit off now. This is depending on what happens, given the fact we're probably not having a final exam. This may in fact be worth 30% of your final marks. So certainly something you want to pay a fair bit of attention to. Assignment description, really, I want to break this up into sort of 4 pieces. The first piece is a bit of research on the company and the stock. Okay, got to research the company, get a mission statement, understand what the company is all about, what do they do, what do they sell, what are their products, etc. And then you go ahead and you tell me a little bit about the history of the company, okay, and what their goals are and so on, okay? And that's just sort of a little intro, all right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to do basically 2 large things and then little things as time goes on. So anyway, the 2 large things are this. 1, you're going to define and explain to me, including substitutions and raw number crunching and so on and so forth, of your actual data to tell me how to do, for example, a standard deviation. Okay, what is a standard deviation? What does it mean? And then you'll use one of your years, maybe the 1 year data set that you're supposed to use and analyze, and then show me how to use the 1 year to actually show me how to do a standard deviation calculation. You'll have to do that for a correlation coefficient. You'll have to do that for a line of best fit determination or a linear regression. You'll have to do that for any grouping of your stats for your probability distribution or frequency distribution of their various stock prices. So you'll have to be able to, most people pick their 1 year stats and they take those 1 year stats and they crunch out the numbers. Now I'll be showing you how to use Excel to crunch out those numbers because I don't expect you to do it by hand, but you will have to do substitutions into the formulas and show me those substitutions. Now how you show me those substitutions, you can type them into Microsoft Word. There is an extension called equation editor. If you get used to using that, it's not too bad to put in math formulas. Or you can write it out on a piece of paper, take a picture, scan it in, and then put the picture into a Word file, cut and paste the picture into a Word file. Either way, you're going to be doing that. So 1, you've got to have kind of a glossary of calculations. What are they? How do they work? And here's an example of me doing it. Then what you're going to do is you're going to have basically 3 data sets. That's the other part. With the 3 data sets, you're going to do all kinds of calculations. Single variable, 2 variable calculations, probability distributions, grouping your data, grouped and ungrouped, mean, standard deviation, variance, Q1, Q2, Q3, interquartile range, box and whisker plots, although that's a bonus, scatter plots of your day versus your stock price, to look at the progression of how the stock has changed over time. And you have to do this for 3 separate data sets. The 3 separate data sets are a 5-year, a 3-year, and a 1-year. Now for one of those, you're probably already going to have done all that number crunching to show me how you actually can do all the calculations of what they mean in your glossary. But the other 2 you have to do as well, okay? And you'll see that reflected in your analysis, in your rubric that you have at the end of the assignment sheet, okay? The fourth part, I think that's the most important, or I guess sort of the third part, but anyway, when you do any calculation and you show it to me, you have to comment on it and tell me what it means. Remember, the purpose of this stock market assignment is not just to say, hey, I can do a bunch of stats, here they are. No, it's to say, what does it mean? What does it tell you as a potential investor or as someone who is trying to tell me something about the company? Why over 5 years was the average stock price lower compared to over 1 year? Because over this year they did really well, and over the last 2 or 3 years they had a hard year because of this and this and this. You have to give me reasons and explanations for the patterns that you see and some of the numbers that you see relative to each other. Okay? And so that's supposed to be done as you go along. So if you show me, over time, this is what the stock price is doing, then you're going to say, hey, the company's doing well, or there's a dip. I'm expecting just about all of you to mention the dip that we see from February on to about now in the stock prices for any particular stock, I'm guessing. And that being the case, then some explanations that have to do with that related to, the COVID crisis and, of course, the problems that we have with the economy. So this is something that you need to keep in mind, and you need to explain yourself and what it means to the company. I guess the final piece to your CPT is going to be a reflection. What did you learn from this process? More importantly, what did you learn about this company, specifically as an investor? So it's a bit of a reflection, a summary, a kind of conclusion, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to show you students' work. This is all outlined in your particular plan here. Okay, and all the different calculations are here. You'll see again a 1 year, a 3 year, and a 5 year span for standard deviation, correlation coefficient, measures of central tendency, probability distribution, box and whisker plot. Although that is a bit of a bonus. So if you do those, you can get a bonus. Okay, and then the written report, of course, that goes along with that. Now, and of course, this is all where all the marks come from in the 4 categories: communication, thinking, knowledge, and making connections or applications. Okay, so that's the actual assignment sheet. Go through that, read through in detail. This is an example of a student's report. They did fairly well, but they were still missing some key ideas and made some boo-boos as time went by. But this person also did box and whisker plots, which were a bonus, so that actually ended up going in his favor. Anyway, he decided to do Boeing, okay? And so he has table of contents, okay? He's got a bit about the company. He could have maybe added a little bit more about the company, that's okay, but 1 page or so is pretty reasonable. Then what he decided to do is use his 5-year analysis. I don't know why 5 years rather than 1 year, but it doesn't really make a difference when you're doing all the work in Excel. So what he did here, of course, is he showed me his linear and nonlinear regressions on this particular figure here. And then he does an explanation afterwards about what it means to him. Then he goes on and he shows me his linear correlation. Now, he didn't show me the table where you crunch all the numbers. You're going to be submitting to me Excel files that have all this stuff on it, okay, that I can check whenever I want to make sure that you did the work. What we see here is the formula for A and B, or for the slope and the y-intercept of the linear regression. And so he plugs in his numbers. As you can see, they're fairly large numbers that he plugs in there, and he gets the final result. The final result will also be the same result that you get when you do your number crunching in Microsoft Excel. Okay, so you should be able to see it in Microsoft Excel. He talks a little bit about it. He didn't really do as much analysis afterwards as to what it meant, but still, he talked a bit about it. Okay, this is where he explains what Pearson's correlation coefficient is for his R value, and then he did an R value calculation here, and then summed it all up with one particular value. You don't have to show me all the steps, just 1 or 2 steps, certainly the substitution, and then the final result. Then he did a linear regression, of course, which is what he just did. Then what he did in this linear regression model, and this is something you're going to have to do, is you're going to have to interpolate and extrapolate particular values. Now, actually, for all of this, these are all extrapolations. Okay? That being the case, then, what ends up happening is in this extrapolation, when I say, how much, use your regression to predict the value in a month, don't put in 20 into your formula for X. You put in 20 plus the 1,250 or 60 days that you had to. So if you'll see right here in the calculation, you'll see that for 20 business days, which is a month, he's got 20 plus 1,258. Okay, that's 20 into the future. Okay, and then he did the calculation and figured out what the stock price should be. He did it, of course, for 6 months. So 1 month, 6 months, and then, he did for a year, and then for 10 years. Okay, again, what is this stock going to be worth in time? And then a commentary. In this case, he says opinions on results. Okay, here are his measures of central tendency. Again, he shows me the mean, standard deviation, plugs in the numbers, goes ahead and figures it all out. Oops, I think I photocopied this twice. Here it is. He plugs in the numbers, and then he crunched all the numbers out. Here's his quartiles and interquartile range. Okay, here's his box and whisker plot. That's a bonus. You want to have a bit more of a detailed title in your box and whisker plot. And then he has his frequency distribution he did here. Okay, and he grouped his data for stock price and got the various frequencies, and you can use your COUNTIF functions for that. Then he graphed what the distribution looked like. It's always a frequency distribution, but you could do a relative frequency distribution if you wanted to. Technically, it should be to be a probability distribution. And then, of course, he did the same thing for 1 year. And he did the same thing for his 3 years. So his 5 year was his demo one, where he figured out all the values for all the stats. and defined all the stats and showed me how to do them. And then after that, he went from there. These are his lines of best fit that he used, okay, for all the different calculations. And he picked a nonlinear versus a linear line of best fit. And then, as I said before, at the end, you're going to do a reflection and a final analysis. His was a little bit brief. And to comment at the end, the references could have been a little bit better done. Okay, obviously the format should be APA. Okay, and maybe it would be nice to have a few more literature references, whether you're looking into journals or economic articles or newspaper articles, whoever, the Financial Times, the Financial Post, whoever's analyzing this company, to find out a bit more about them and why they behaved the way that they did. This student did quite well on it. It's very good potential for you to do very well, but you do have to get all these key components in there. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea about what you're looking at.